This queen was born to rule, became queen as a baby, and died a prisoner. But for 19 years, from inside a castle prison, she commanded armies, masterminded conspiracies, and almost destroyed an entire kingdom. This is the insane story of Mary, Queen of Scots, who ran a war from a prison cell. And it all led to one of the most dramatic endings in history. Our story kicks off with a literal newborn. In 1542, Mary Stuart is born, and just 6 days later, her dad, the King of Scotland, dies. Just like that, this tiny baby is the official Queen of Scots. The situation was completely insane. Scotland was being torn apart by England and France, and a new religious war was exploding. The biggest threat was King Henry VIII of England, Mary's own great-uncle. Henry decides he's going to take over Scotland by forcing a marriage between baby Mary and his own young son, Prince Edward. He called this the rough wooing, but it was basically a terror campaign where English armies just burned down the Scottish countryside to get their way. But the Scottish lords weren't having it. They were loyal to France, England's biggest enemy. So to save their baby queen from being a pawn in Henry's game, they made a move nobody saw coming. When she was just 5 years old, they put Mary on a ship and sent her to France. She left the dark, war-torn castles of Scotland for the most glamorous and wealthy court in all of Europe. She was there to marry the future King of France, Francis, and she absolutely crushed it. She grew up to be tall, super smart, and beautiful. She learned a bunch of languages, was amazing at poetry and music, and the French king, her future father-in-law, said, "The little Queen of Scots is the most perfect child that I have ever seen." In 1558, she married Francis. A year later, they were crowned King and Queen of France. At 16, Mary was the queen of 2 countries. She was at the peak of her power, loved by everyone. But this perfect life didn't last. Her husband, Francis, was always sick and died after just 1 year of being king. So at 18, Mary was a widow and no longer the Queen of France. Her mom, who was ruling Scotland for her, had also just died. Devastated and out of options, Mary decided to go back to Scotland, a country she couldn't even remember. In 1561, Mary sailed back to Scotland, but the country had completely changed. A massive religious revolution, the Protestant Reformation, had taken over. It was led by this intense preacher, John Knox, who saw Mary, a Catholic queen raised in France, as the ultimate enemy. The second she stepped off the boat, she was a total stranger in her own country. A Catholic queen in a new, hardcore Protestant nation. And if that wasn't bad enough, her cousin, Elizabeth I, was now the Protestant Queen of England. But to every Catholic in Europe, Elizabeth was illegitimate. They believed the real Queen of England was Mary. Mary had a direct claim to the English throne through her grandmother, and many thought her claim was stronger than Elizabeth's. This rivalry with Elizabeth would define the rest of her life and ultimately lead to her doom. Mary was constantly walking a tightrope, trying to keep her Protestant lords happy while being a Catholic, and trying to get Elizabeth to name her as the heir to England, which Elizabeth absolutely refused to do. Mary knew she needed to get married and have a son to secure her power. She picked her cousin, Lord Darnley. He was handsome, ambitious, and also had a claim to the English throne. This was a massive power move, and Queen Elizabeth was furious. Mary thought this marriage was a genius idea, but it turned into an absolute disaster. Darnley turned out to be an arrogant, violent, and crazy jealous guy who just wanted power for himself. He demanded Mary make him a king, but she refused. He got insanely jealous of Mary's private secretary and good friend, an Italian musician named David Rizzio. In March 1566, in one of the craziest events of her reign, Darnley and a bunch of lords stormed into Mary's private dining room at Holyrood Palace. Right in front of a heavily pregnant Mary, they dragged Rizzio out and stabbed him to death over 50 times. It was a terrifying act of violence meant to control the Queen. For Mary, any love she had for Darnley was gone. It was replaced by pure hatred and fear. Even though she gave birth to their son, James, a few months later, the marriage was completely destroyed. The new problem wasn't how to live with Darnley, but how to get rid of him. The Scottish lords were already plotting. It all went down on the night of February 10th, 1567. A massive explosion completely destroyed the house where Darnley was staying. But his body was found in the garden outside, apparently strangled. This meant he escaped the explosion only to be murdered. Everyone immediately suspected James Hepburn, the Earl of Bothwell, a powerful nobleman who had become Mary's closest advisor. And then the scandal got even crazier. Bothwell was put on trial and found not guilty in a total sham. Then, he kidnapped Mary. We still don't know if she was in on it or not. And just 3 months after her husband was murdered, she married him. To everyone in Scotland, it looked like the Queen had just married her husband's killer. Her reputation was obliterated. Her enemies produced the Casket Letters, a collection of secret letters they claimed were proof that she and Bothwell planned the whole thing. We still don't know if they're real, but they were used to turn everyone against her. Marrying Bothwell was the last straw. A huge army of lords rose up against Mary. At a place called Carberry Hill, her own troops abandoned her. Mary was forced to surrender and was imprisoned in Lochleven Castle, on an island in the middle of a lake. It was the ultimate humiliation. There, they forced her to give up the throne to her baby son, who was then crowned King James VI of Scotland. But Mary was not done. Even locked up, she was a fighter. In May 1568, with help from a few loyal followers, she pulled off a crazy, dramatic escape from the island castle. In just a few days, she raised another army. But her freedom didn't last long. Her army was crushed at the Battle of Langside. With 0 options left in Scotland, Mary made a final, desperate move. She fled south and crossed the border into England, asking her cousin, Queen Elizabeth I, for protection. This turned out to be the worst mistake of her life. How did a queen with so much power end up a prisoner? And how, from inside that prison, did she become more dangerous than ever? Mary showed up in England and immediately became a massive problem for Queen Elizabeth. Mary had a claim to Elizabeth's throne and was a hero to every Catholic who wanted to overthrow her. Elizabeth couldn't help her, because that would mean supporting a queen accused of murder. But she couldn't let her go to France or Spain, because Mary could raise a foreign army and invade England. So, Elizabeth did the only thing she could think of. She imprisoned her. What started as house arrest turned into 19 years in prison. We're not talking about a dark dungeon. Mary was held in huge castles and mansions, a gilded cage, with a staff of around 30 to 40 people. But she was 100% a prisoner. Every single move was watched, her letters were read, and her guards had one job: make sure she never escapes. They moved her from castle to castle to stop any rescue plans. Elizabeth hoped Mary would just fade away, but they completely underestimated her. Mary never stopped believing she was the true queen, and from her prison, she started acting like one. Trapped by stone walls, Mary's letters became her weapons. She ran a non-stop campaign of conspiracy from her room, spinning a giant web of secret messages that went all over England and Europe. Historians say she sent and received thousands of letters, many written in complex codes to get past her guards. She smuggled them out with loyal servants, friendly locals, and at one point, she even hid them in the corks of beer barrels being delivered to the castle. Through this secret network, she stayed in touch with her supporters, worked with the French ambassador, and pleaded for help from the Pope and the King of Spain. She became the one thing Elizabeth was terrified of, the living symbol of the Catholic mission to take over England. There were multiple massive plots to assassinate Elizabeth and put Mary on the throne, like the Ridolfi Plot of 1571. Mary was no longer a victim. She was an active, incredibly dangerous player in a deadly game, willing to risk it all to be queen again. Elizabeth's head spy, Sir Francis Walsingham, was one of the most ruthless spy masters in the world. He was obsessed with stopping Mary, and he needed undeniable proof that she was a traitor. In 1586, he got his chance. A group of young, reckless Catholic guys, led by Anthony Babington, were planning the biggest plot yet: assassinate Queen Elizabeth, start a Catholic rebellion, and put Mary on the throne. Walsingham didn't just find the plot, he secretly took it over. In an incredible move, he controlled the entire communication line between Mary and the plotters. Every secret letter went straight to him first. His master codebreaker, Thomas Philippus, figured out the code. They'd copy the letters, reseal them, and send them on. Walsingham just waited. In July 1586, Babington wrote to Mary and laid out the entire plan, including the murder of Elizabeth. Walsingham had the letter. He just needed Mary's reply. A few days later, it arrived. Mary wrote back, giving the green light to the entire plan, including the assassination. Walsingham had her. She had just signed her own death warrant. With the proof he needed, Walsingham moved in. Babington and his friends were arrested and executed. Mary was put on trial for treason. She fought back hard, arguing that as a queen from another country, she couldn't be tried by an English court. It was a good argument, but it didn't matter. The verdict was already decided. She was found guilty and sentenced to death. Queen Elizabeth actually waited for months. Executing another queen, her own cousin, was a terrifying move. But her advisors pressured her, telling her England would never be safe as long as Mary was alive. On February 1st, 1587, Elizabeth signed the death warrant. On the morning of February 8th, 1587, Mary, Queen of Scots, walked to her execution. For her final moment, she had planned a stunning and defiant message. Under her dark gown, she wore an outfit of bright crimson red, the color of Catholic martyrdom. When she took off her black robe on the platform, the crowd was shocked. She faced her death with incredible courage. But the execution was a complete horror show. The executioner's first axe swing missed her neck and hit the back of her head. The second swing cut through most of her neck, but not all of it. He had to saw through the last bit. Then, when he held her head up and yelled, "God save the Queen," her famous red hair fell off. It was a wig. Underneath, her real hair was short and gray. And in a final, unbelievable moment, her little dog, which had been hiding under her dress the whole time, ran out and lay whimpering in the pool of her blood. Mary Stuart was born a queen, lived like a queen, and died a martyr for her cause. She was executed for treason, but in the end, she won. When Queen Elizabeth died without any children in 1603, the person who took the throne of England was Mary's own son, James. He united the thrones of Scotland and England, and Mary's bloodline, not Elizabeth's, has ruled Britain ever since. She lost her life, but her son got the ultimate prize she always wanted. She even had a famous motto she embroidered in prison: "In my end is my beginning." So what do you think? Was Mary a tragic victim or a master schemer who caused her own downfall? Let us know what you think in the comments below. And for more insane stories from history, make sure you like this video and subscribe. Thanks for watching.